Hey guys. In today's video, we will delve into a stunning story of spiritual transformation and profound revelations. Everett Stone took part in a charity run, but what he found was far beyond what he expected. During a near-death experience, he had a direct encounter with Jesus, and what Jesus revealed to him about the Holy Grail and the lies of religions will completely change his perception of life and spirituality. Stay until the end, so you don't miss any details of this incredible journey. And don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell for more stories like this. Hello, my name is Everett Stone. I'm an ordinary guy, like any other guy you might meet on the street. I'm 42 years old, I work as an accountant for a mid-sized company in Boulder, Colorado, and I live a pretty normal life. I have been married to my wife Sarah for 15 years, and we have 2 teenage children, Emily and Michael. On the weekends, I like to go hiking in the mountains near our city. It's my way of escaping the office routine and connecting with nature. I have never been a very religious or spiritual person. I went to church from time to time with my family when I was a child, but I confess that I never gave much importance to these things. My life revolved around work, family, and some leisure activities. I considered myself a rational, down-to-earth person. If someone told me a story about supernatural experiences or the afterlife, I would probably be skeptical. But all that changed in 2011. It was that year that I had an experience that completely transformed my worldview and my understanding of life and death. It is this experience that I want to tell you about today. At that time, I was 29 years old and had just moved to Boulder with my family. We were adapting to the new city, and I was looking for ways to get involved with the local community. That's when I heard about a charity race that was taking place on nearby mountain trails. I thought it would be a great opportunity to do something good and at the same time challenge myself physically. I never imagined that simple decision to participate in a race would change my life forever. If someone had told me that day what I was about to experience, I probably would have laughed and thought it was a joke. But life has these things, doesn't it? Sometimes the most transformative moments happen when we least expect them. So here I am, ready to share with you the story of my near-death experience. I am no spiritual guru, nor have I written books on the subject. I'm just an ordinary guy who went through something extraordinary and feels the need to share it with others. Maybe my story can bring comfort, spark curiosity, or simply make you reflect on life in a different way. Whatever the reason that brought you here, I thank you for listening to my story. Race day arrived, and I woke up early, excited and a little nervous. The sky was clear, and the fresh mountain air brought an invigorating energy. I had a hearty breakfast, stretched out, and headed to the starting point. Arriving there, I was impressed by the number of people. There were hundreds of runners, some clearly experienced athletes, others looking as amateur as me. What caught my attention the most was seeing several people with disabilities preparing for the race. I was especially impressed by a young man who had prosthetics on both legs. While waiting in line to get my hall number, I ended up talking to this guy. His name was Kyle Matthews, and he told me that this would be his 10th race since he lost his legs in an accident. I was impressed by his determination and good humor. Kyle had an infectious smile and a positive attitude that instantly inspired me. As the start time approached, I noticed the weather starting to change. The previously clear sky now had a few clouds, and a cold breeze was blowing from the mountains. A few runners around me commented on the sudden change in weather, but no one seemed too concerned. Finally, the starting signal sounded. The sound of hundreds of feet hitting the ground filled the air. The energy was contagious. I started running, trying to maintain a steady pace. The first few parts of the trail were relatively easy, but I knew the real challenge was ahead. As we progressed, the trail became steeper and narrower. The terrain was uneven with roots and rocks that required constant attention. Still, I felt good. My body was warm and I had found a comfortable rhythm. Every now and then I could see Kyle in front of me. Seeing him running with his prosthetics gave me an extra boost of motivation. If he could do it, I certainly could too. After about an hour of running, we reached a critical point on the route. We had to cross a river. The water was freezing and the current was stronger than I expected. I took a deep breath and entered the water. The thermal shock was immediate. I felt my legs go numb as I fought the current. I managed to cross, but something wasn't right. My body was shaking uncontrollably, and I couldn't warm up even though I continued to run. My muscles started to tense and my vision blurred slightly. I tried to ignore these signs, thinking it was just tiredness. I kept running, but each step became more difficult. My breathing became labored and irregular. The world around me seemed to spin. It was then that, without warning, everything went dark. I fell. At that moment, lying on the cold ground of the trail, I didn't know I was about to embark on the most extraordinary journey of my life. A journey that would take me beyond the limits of what I believed possible, beyond life itself as I knew it. What happened next is something I still have trouble putting into words. It's like trying to explain colors to someone who has never seen them. But I will do my best to share this experience with you. The moment I fell, I felt something strange happen. It was like I was being pulled out of my own body. Suddenly I found myself floating above the scene. There I was, looking at my own body lying on the trail. It was a surreal feeling, like I was watching a movie about myself. I saw the people around start to huddle together. 2 paramedics arrived quickly and started helping me. I could clearly see one of them starting CPR. My friend Jessica, who was a medical volunteer at the race, was there too. I could see the desperation in her eyes as she watched the paramedics work. The strangest thing about all this is that I wasn't afraid. There was no pain. There was no panic. It was as if all physical sensations had disappeared. Instead, there was an eerie calm, a peace I had never experienced before. As I watched the scene from above, I started to notice other things. The colors seemed more vivid, more intense than I had ever seen. I could hear every sound with incredible clarity. People's worried voices, the noise of medical equipment, even the distant sound of the river I had crossed. It was then that I felt something pulling me. It was as if an invisible force was drawing me away from the scene. I wasn't scared, but curious. I decided not to resist and let myself be carried away. Suddenly, I found myself being sucked into some kind of tunnel. It was dark, but not scary. It was more like a vacuum, where the silence was absolute. I moved quickly through this tunnel, feeling like I was heading towards something important. As I progressed through the tunnel, I began to see flashes of memories. They were scenes from my life, but not just the big moments. I saw little details that I had long forgotten. My mother's smile when I was a child, the smell of freshly cut grass in the backyard of my childhood home, the gentle touch of my wife's hand on our first date. These memories were not just images. I could feel the emotions associated with each of them with incredible intensity. It was as if I was reliving each moment, but with a much deeper understanding of its meaning. As I progressed through the tunnel, I felt a growing sense of anticipation. It was like I was approaching something important, something I needed to see or understand. And then suddenly the tunnel ended. In front of me I saw a light, but it was no ordinary light. It was the brightest and most welcoming thing I had ever seen. It was as if this light was made of pure love, if that makes sense. I wanted to get closer to that light, but I felt resistance. Every step towards her seemed to require enormous effort. But something inside me knew I needed to keep going, that there was something important waiting for me in that light. So, mustering all my willpower, I took a step towards the light, and another one. Each step became easier than the last, as if the light was drawing me in, inviting me in. And that's when I stepped into the light. What happened next changed everything I believed about life, death, and the universe. When I stepped into the light, I was immediately enveloped by a feeling of unconditional love and acceptance. It was like every part of me, every mistake I ever made, every insecurity I ever had, was completely accepted and loved. It was an overwhelming feeling of peace and belonging. It was at that moment that I saw him. Jesus was there, in front of me. It wasn't exactly like the paintings we see in churches. He was dressed in a simple white robe, and there was a shining cross on his chest. But what impressed me most were his eyes. They conveyed a kindness and wisdom that I had never seen before. Jesus approached me and gently touched my head. In that instant, I felt as if all the love in the universe was flowing through me. He smiled and began to speak. His voice was soft, but carried an undeniable authority. "Everett," he said, "I'm glad to see you here. You've done good on Earth, even if you don't always realize it." I was surprised. I? Doing well? I always considered myself an ordinary person, not someone who did great things. As if reading my thoughts, Jesus continued, "The little things you do, the acts of kindness that seem insignificant to you, have a bigger impact than you realize." He then showed me scenes from my life, moments I had long forgotten. I found myself helping a homeless man once by giving him some coins and a sandwich. Jesus showed me how that small act of kindness had given hope to the man, who eventually managed to rebuild his life and began helping others in similar situations. "See, Everett," Jesus said, "every act of love, no matter how small, creates waves of kindness that spread throughout the world." I was moved to see the impact my actions had had. But then Jesus showed me another scene. It was me making an insensitive comment to a coworker. I saw how that comment had negatively affected his life, triggering a series of events that damaged his career. I felt ashamed, but Jesus didn't judge me. He just said, "This is for you to understand that every action, good or bad, has consequences. Our words and actions have power, Everett. Use that power wisely and lovingly." I then realized that Jesus was not there to judge me, but to teach me. He wanted me to understand the true meaning of love and compassion. "Everett," he continued, "there are many things that the religions on earth have not correctly understood about me and my teachings. I did not come to found a religion, but to teach the way of love." I was intrigued. If religions had not understood correctly, what was truth then? Jesus once again seemed to read my thoughts. "The truth, Everett, is simpler and at the same time deeper than many imagine. It's about love, balance, and the ability to transform energy. It's about understanding that we are all connected, all part of something bigger." I had so many questions, so many things I wanted to understand. But at the same time, I felt like I was receiving more information than my mind could process. Jesus smiled again, understanding. "You will have time to understand all of this, Everett. For now, remember, love is the most powerful force in the universe. Use it wisely." With these words, I felt that my encounter with Jesus was coming to an end. But before he left, he had one more thing to show me. Something that would completely change my understanding of God, life, and the universe. Jesus then took me to a place that seemed to be made of pure light and energy. It was as if we were floating in the middle of the cosmos, surrounded by stars and galaxies. It was there that he began to reveal truths to me that I never imagined I would hear. "Everett," he began, his voice echoing through space. "The image of God that many on earth have been distorted over the centuries. Religions, although with good intentions, have often limited understanding of the divine." I was perplexed. Like this? All my life, even though I wasn't very religious, I had a certain image of God and how things worked spiritually. Jesus continued, "God is not an authoritative figure sitting on a throne in the clouds, judging humanity. God is the source of all existence, the creative energy that permeates the entire universe. Every living thing, every particle of matter is the expression of this divine energy." I tried to absorb this information, which seemed so different from anything I had ever heard before. Jesus, noticing my confusion, smiled gently. "Think of it like an ocean, Everett. Each living thing is like a wave in that ocean. It appears separate and individual, but in fact it is an inseparable part of the whole. This whole is what we call God." He then showed me views of different religions throughout history. I saw how the original teachings were often misinterpreted or distorted to serve political or personal agendas. "My mission on earth was not to found a new religion," Jesus explained. "It was about showing people the path of love, compassion, and connection with the divine that exists within each person. But over the centuries, this message was often lost or distorted. I was shocked to realize how much conflict and suffering had been caused in the name of religion, when the original purpose was to bring peace and love. Jesus continued, "The truth is that all religions in essence point to the same reality. They are like different paths leading to the top of the same mountain. The problem arises when people become more attached to the path than to the destination." He then revealed something to me that left me even more surprised. My death on the cross was not as it was told. My body was actually transmuted into another dimension. The ascension process was hidden to keep people under control, making them depend of intermediaries to reach the divine. I was stunned by this revelation. If this was true, it meant that much of what I thought I knew about religion and spirituality was wrong. "Don't feel guilty or deceived, Everett," Jesus said, sensing my confusion. "This distortion was not done with malicious intent, but due to a lack of understanding. The important thing is that you now have the opportunity to understand the deeper truth." He then explained to me that the true purpose of spirituality is not to worship an external entity, but to recognize and develop the divine within ourselves. Every human being has the potential to reach high levels of consciousness and love. This is what I meant when I said that the kingdom of heaven is within you. As I tried to process all this information, Jesus prepared me for yet another revelation. There is something else you need to understand, Everett, something that has been misunderstood for centuries and that has the power to transform humanity. It is the true meaning of the Holy Grail. Jesus looked at me with an intensity I had never experienced before. His eyes seemed to contain all the wisdom of the universe. "Everett," he began, "the Holy Grail is not a physical object as many believe. It is not a chalice or a cup. It is knowledge, an ancient wisdom that has the power to transform the very essence of life." I was intrigued. All my life, I had heard stories and legends about the Holy Grail, but I never imagined that it could be anything other than a mythical object. "The true Holy Grail," Jesus continued, "is the knowledge of energy transmutation. It is the understanding of how consciousness can shape reality, how spirit can influence matter." He then showed me visions of ancient civilizations that possessed this knowledge. I saw pyramids being built with technology that seemed magical. I saw miraculous healings being performed through the power of the mind. I saw people achieving states of consciousness that seemed divine. "This knowledge," Jesus explained, "allows the regeneration of the body, the healing of illnesses, and even the possibility of transcending physical death as you know it." I was flabbergasted. If this was true, why was this knowledge not widely known and used? As if reading my thoughts, Jesus responded, "This knowledge has been kept secret for millennia, guarded by a few who feared its power if it fell into the wrong hands. But now, humanity is reaching a point in its evolution where it is ready to receive this wisdom." He then explained to me that the energy transmutation process begins within ourselves. It is a delicate balance between mind, body, and spirit. When this balance is achieved, the human being becomes capable of things that would seem like miracles to the untrained eye. Jesus showed me meditation techniques and energy practices that could help achieve this state of balance. I saw how conscious breathing, visualization, and controlling thoughts could literally alter the molecular structure of the body. Unconditional love, he emphasized, is the key to unlocking this potential. When you truly love without judgment or expectation, you align with the frequency of the universe. It is in this state that true magic happens. I was amazed by these revelations, but also a little scared. This knowledge seemed to have immense power. What if it fell into the wrong hands? Jesus, once again anticipating my concern, said, "Fear not, Everett. This knowledge can only be truly accessed by those whose hearts are pure and whose intentions are noble. Love is the keeper of this secret." He then explained to me that my mission, upon returning to Earth, would be to begin preparing people to receive this wisdom. "You don't have to reveal everything at once," he said. "Start by teaching people about the power of love, compassion, and connecting to the divine within them. The rest will come naturally when the time is right." As I absorbed this information, I felt a change within me. It was as if every cell of my being was vibrating at a higher frequency. I realized that just being in the presence of this truth was transforming me. Remember, Everett, Jesus concluded, the true Holy Grail is within you. It is within every human being. Your mission is to help people rediscover this inner treasure. With those words, I felt like I was ready for the next part of my journey. A journey that would take me back to Earth, but with a completely new purpose and understanding. After the revelations about the Holy Grail, Jesus took me to a place that seemed to be a vast field of pulsating energy. Colors I had never seen before danced around us, and I could feel vibrations of pure love and wisdom permeating the entire environment. Everett, Jesus began, his voice resonating through the energy field. Now that you understand the true meaning of the Holy Grail, it is time to better understand the nature of life and death. He made a sweeping gesture with his hand, and suddenly I saw before me what seemed to be a film of my own life, from birth to the present moment. But it wasn't just a sequence of events. I could see and feel the connections between each moment, each choice, each encounter. Life as you understand it on Earth is just a small part of a much larger journey, Jesus explained. Each life is like a class in a cosmic school. You come to learn specific lessons, to grow and evolve as souls. I then saw scenes from past lives, not just mine but other people's too. I realized that souls I met in this life had met before, in different roles and relationships. Death, Jesus continued, is not the end, but a transition. It is as if you are moving from one classroom to another, taking with you the lessons you have learned. He showed me the transition process after physical death. I saw souls being welcomed by loved ones, going through a period of reflection and then planning their next incarnation. The fear of death is one of the greatest obstacles to humanity's spiritual growth, Jesus said. When you understand that consciousness continues, that love persists beyond the physical body, you free yourself to live fully. Jesus then explained to me about karma, but not in the way I had always heard. Karma is not punishment or reward, he clarified. It is simply the law of cause and effect applied to soul growth. Every action, every thought, creates waves of energy that eventually return to you, bringing opportunities for learning and growth. He showed me how certain difficult experiences in my current life were actually opportunities to resolve past life karmic issues. I saw how challenging relationships were actually souls coming together to resolve old conflicts and learn lessons of forgiveness and love. Compassion, Jesus emphasized, is the key to transcending the karmic cycle. When you truly forgive, when you love unconditionally, you break the chains that bind souls to one another in repetitive patterns. He then revealed to me something that surprised me deeply. Time, as you know it on Earth, does not exist in this dimension. Past, present, and future happen simultaneously. This is why healing can happen not only in the present, but can also change the past and the future. I was stunned by this information. If time wasn't linear, did that mean we could heal past traumas and positively influence the future, all from the present moment? Exactly, Jesus confirmed, reading my thoughts. That's why the power of the present moment is so important. Every act of love, every conscious choice, has the power to transform not just your future, but your past as well. Jesus then taught me energy healing techniques and showed me how we can use conscious intention to send love and healing across time and space. I saw how we could send love to our past selves, healing old trauma, and how we could visualize and manifest positive futures. Remember, Everett, Jesus concluded, life is eternal. Death is just an illusion. What really matters is the love you give and receive, the lessons you learn, and the growth of your soul. When you live with this understanding, every moment becomes a sacred opportunity for evolution and expression of divine love. As I absorbed these profound lessons about life and death, I felt an indescribable peace wash over me. I realized that the fear of death that I carried without even realizing it was dissolving. In its place came a deep gratitude for life's journey and an excitement for the infinite possibilities each moment offers. After what felt like an eternity immersed in these profound revelations, I felt a subtle shift in the energy around me. Jesus looked at me with a mixture of love and, was it sadness? "Everett," he said softly, "the time has come for you to return." I felt a tightness in my chest. Return? But I still had so many questions, so many things to learn. Jesus, noticing my hesitation, smiled gently. "Remember, the journey does not end here. In fact, it has just begun. You are returning with a purpose, with a mission." He then explained to me that my near-death experience was not an accident, but part of a larger plan. "You were chosen to be a bridge, Everett. A bridge between the physical world and the spiritual world. Your mission is to share what you have learned here, not necessarily with words, but through your actions, through your love." I felt the weight of this responsibility, but at the same time, a wave of determination invaded me. I knew my life would never be the same again. "Don't worry about convincing people or proving anything," Jesus continued. "Simply live the truths you learned here. Be an example of unconditional love, of compassion, of connection with the divine. People will feel the change in you and will naturally be drawn to that light." He then gave me specific instructions on spiritual practices that I should incorporate into my daily life: meditation, visualization, energy work. These practices will help you maintain your connection to this dimension and continue your spiritual growth, he explained. Jesus also warned me about the challenges I would face. There will be moments when you doubt this experience, when the physical world will seem so real and overwhelming that it will all seem like a distant dream. In those moments, take a deep breath and remember, you are a spiritual being having a human experience, not the contrary. I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. Part of me didn't want to go. I wanted to stay in this place of eternal peace and love. But I knew deep down in my being that I had a mission to accomplish. Jesus, sensing my internal struggle, placed his hand on my shoulder. The touch radiated a love and understanding that calmed me instantly. "Everett," he said, "remember that you are never truly separate from this place. This dimension of love and light is always within you. You can access it at any time. Just close your eyes and connect with your heart." He then gave me one last piece of advice. "When you come back, things may seem intense at first. The colors, the sounds, the emotions, everything may seem amplified. This is normal. Your body and mind will need time to adjust to the new frequency you are operating in now. Be patient with yourself." I nodded, feeling a mixture of anxiety and expectation. Jesus smiled once again and said, "We are with you always, Everett. Me, your spirit guides, your departed loved ones. We are all rooting for you and supporting you on your journey. Never forget that." With these words, Jesus made a gesture and the environment around us began to change. The bright light began to dissipate, and I felt like I was being pulled back. "Remember, Everett," Jesus' voice echoed as I walked away, "love is the answer, always." And then, in the blink of an eye, everything went dark. The first thing I felt was pain. A sharp pain in my chest that made me want to scream, but my throat was too dry to make any sound. Slowly, I began to hear voices around me, muffled at first, but becoming clearer by the second. "He's coming back. We need to stabilize him." I recognized the voice of Jessica, my doctor friend. I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids felt like they weighed tons. Finally, I managed to open them. The light was intense, almost painful. Just as Jesus had warned me, everything seemed amplified. The colors were more vivid than I remembered, the sounds clearer. I could feel every fiber of the blanket over me, every draft of air that passed across my skin. "Everett, Everett, can you hear me?" Jessica's voice was full of worry and relief at the same time. I tried to speak, but my throat was too dry. Jessica noticed and offered me some water. The cold liquid running down my throat was an indescribable sensation. Where am I?" I finally managed to ask, my voice hoarse and weak. "You're in the hospital, Everett," Jessica replied softly. "You went into cardiac arrest during the race. We were very worried." I looked around and saw that I was in an intensive care unit. Machines beeped beside me, monitoring my vitals. Through the window, I could see that it was already night. "How long?" I started asking. "You were unconscious for almost 48 hours, Jessica replied. "There were times when, well, we weren't sure if you would come back." I closed my eyes for a moment, remembering the incredible journey I had experienced. It seemed like it lasted an eternity, but here, in the physical world, it was only 2 days. "Everett?" Jessica continued, her voice wavering. Do you remember anything? While you were unconscious?" I opened my eyes and looked at her. I could see the curiosity in his eyes, mixed with professional concern. For a moment, I considered telling her everything, about Jesus, about the revelations, about the Holy Grail. But then I remembered Jesus's advice. There was no need to convince anyone with words. I had dreams," I finally replied. "Dreams of peace and love." Jessica nodded, looking both relieved and a little disappointed. "Well, the important thing is that you're back with us," she said, shaking my hand gently. In the days that followed, I underwent a series of examinations and tests. The doctors were perplexed by my quick recovery. "It's almost as if your body has completely regenerated itself," one of them commented, looking at my results in amazement. I knew the truth, of course. I knew that the experience I had was not just a dream, but something deeply real and transformative. But I also knew that this was not the time to share all of this. Instead, I focused on recovering and incorporating the lessons I had learned into my daily life. As I recovered, I began to notice subtle changes in myself. Colors seemed more vibrant, flavors more intense. More than that, I began to feel a deep connection with everything and everyone around me. I looked at the nurses, the other patients, even the plants in the hospital garden, and I felt an overwhelming love for them all. My wife Sarah and my children came to visit me every day. They noticed the change in me almost immediately. "Dad, your eyes are different," Emily, my daughter, commented one day. "They look brighter." Sarah noticed it too. One night when we were alone in the hospital room, she held my hand and said, "Everett, something has changed in you. I can't explain it, but it's like you're more present, more alive." I smiled at her, feeling a rush of love and gratitude. "I think I've had a transformation, Sarah," I replied softly, "and I look forward to sharing this new version of myself with you and the kids." As I prepared to leave the hospital and return home, I knew I was about to begin a new chapter in my life, a chapter full of purpose, love, and a mission greater than I could have ever imagined. Returning home after the hospital experience was surreal. Everything felt familiar, but at the same time completely new. It was like I was seeing the world through a new pair of eyes, feeling it with a newly awakened heart. In the early days, I found myself stopping several times a day to simply observe and appreciate the things around me. The sound of the wind in the trees, the laughter of children playing in the street, even the hum of the refrigerator. Everything seemed charged with meaning and beauty. I began incorporating the practices Jesus taught me into my daily routine. Every morning, before the rest of the family woke up, I would sit in silence for an hour, meditating and connecting with that dimension of light and love that I had experienced. At first, it was difficult to maintain concentration, but over time it became easier to enter that state of peace and clarity. My family noticed the changes quickly. Sarah commented on how I seemed more patient and present. Michael, my oldest son, said I seemed less stressed. Emily, always the most perceptive, asked me directly one day, "Dad, what happened to you at the hospital? You look different." I decided to be honest with them, at least to some extent. I gathered the family together one night and shared that I had had a profound experience while unconscious. I didn't go into all the details, but I explained that I had understood some important truths about life, love, and our connection to each other. It's like I realized that we are all part of something much bigger, I explained, and that love is the most powerful force in the universe. To my surprise, they didn't think I was crazy. In fact, they seemed curious and even inspired. Sarah started joining me in some of my morning meditations. Emily asked to learn more about energy and healing. Even the normally skeptical Michael began asking questions about spirituality and the meaning of life. At work, things have also changed. I began approaching challenges with a new perspective. Where before I saw problems, I now saw opportunities for growth and learning. My colleagues noticed that I was calmer and more centered, even in stressful situations. One day my boss called me into his office. I thought I might be in trouble. After all, my approach to work had changed considerably. To my surprise, he wanted to praise me. "Everett," he said, "I don't know what's happened to you over the last few months, but the change is remarkable. Your productivity has increased, your team is closer than ever, and you seem to radiate a kind of, well, I don't know how to describe it, but it's positive." I smiled, grateful for the recognition, but knowing that the real work was just beginning. I started getting more involved in volunteer work in the community. I started visiting hospitals and nursing homes regularly, simply to talk to people, hear their stories, and offer a little comfort and love. It was amazing to see how small acts of kindness could have such a profound impact. As the months went by, I started to notice that people were naturally drawn to me. Friends, acquaintances, and even strangers seemed to gravitate toward me, sharing their problems and seeking advice. I didn't have all the answers, of course, but I found that simply listening compassionately and offering unconditional love was often enough. There were challenges, of course. Moments when the reality of the physical world felt so intense and overwhelming that I questioned whether my experience had been real. In those moments, I would close my eyes, take a deep breath, and remember Jesus' words, "You are a spiritual being having a human experience." Gradually, I began to see my near-death experience not as an isolated event, but as the beginning of an ongoing journey. Each day brought new opportunities to learn, grow, and share love. I began to understand that true mission was not about grand gestures or extraordinary achievements, but about living each moment with awareness and love. Today, years after that fateful run in Boulder, I continue my journey of discovery and growth. I'm not perfect, far from it. I still make mistakes, I still have moments of doubt and fear. But now I know that every challenge is an opportunity for evolution, every interaction a chance to share love. Looking back, I see how that near-death experience was a turning point in my life. It was not the end, but a new beginning, an awakening to the infinite possibilities that exist within each of us. If there's one message I'd like to share with the world, it's this: love is real. It is the most powerful force in the universe. It's inside each of us, waiting to be discovered and shared. And when we live from that place of love, the entire universe conspires in our favor. My journey continues, and I am eternally grateful for every moment of it, because I now know that every breath, every heartbeat, is a sacred opportunity to experience and express the divine love that connects us all.